I'm going to share with you something very interesting that I found in a book written by Philip Coppens named The Ancient Alien Question. Maybe this can bring some light about what is happening with the bug that is making a lot of struggles in our modern society. So it says, Professor Chandra, even though the general public reveling ideas of extraterrestrial life, science was expected to show this subject, no matter how strong the evidence, albeit through a conspiracy of silence. It was an unwritten doctrine of science that extraterrestrial life couldn't exist in our immediate vicinity, or that if such life did exist, it could not have a connection with Earth. Professor Chandra became evidence of this conspiracy of silence himself when in March 2010 he was dismissed from his post at Cardiff University's Centre for Astrobiology as funding was withdrawn from his department. Professor Chandra has gone far beyond the idea that a life was seated here on planet Earth. He argues that every day alien life forms enter our planet in the form of flu viruses. He has found that outbreaks of the flu are often found to coincide with the major meteor showers that sprinkle the Earth's atmosphere with what is literally extraterrestrial material. Specifically, he believes that diseases such as the Spanish flu virus actually rode to Earth from space on meteors before it caused widespread death in 1918 to 1920. Between 50 and 100 million people, or 8 to 16% of the world's population, died from Spanish flu, making it one of the deadliest natural disasters in human history. Some 550 million people, or 32%, were infected. Worst affected was Western Samoa, where 90% of the population was infected, and 1/3 of adult men, 1/5 of adult women, and 1/10 of all children were killed. The lethal second wave covered almost the entire world in a very short period of time, suggesting that the speed at which it traveled was beyond a human carrier, and that the virus was literally seeded from space. Lau Weinstein observed that although person-to-person spread occurred in local areas, the disease appeared on the same day in widely separated parts of the world on the one hand, but on the other, took days to weeks to spread relatively short distances. The best evidence for its extraterrestrial delivery mechanism was that in the winter of 1918, the disease suddenly appeared in Alaska in villages that had been isolated for several months. Professor Chandra also points to the Plague of Athens and the Plague of Justinian as two further examples of plagues that might have had alien origins. The Plague of Athens was a devastating epidemic that hit the Greek capital during the second year of the Peloponnesian War, 430 BC. The cause of the plague remains unknown. The Plague of Justinian afflicted the Byzantine Empire, including its capital, Constantinople, in the years AD 541 to 542. It was one of the greatest plagues in history. Professor Chandra includes the more recent SARS, Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome, outbreak as having potential extraterrestrial components. SARS created a near pandemic between November 2002 and July 2003, with 8,422 known infected cases and 916 confirmed human deaths. Within a matter of weeks, SARS had spread from Hong Kong province of China to 37 countries around the world. microbes have been identified in the upper atmosphere, and though it is known that storms, monsoons, and volcanic activity can transport them to these regions, the mesosphere is also the first region where meteors begin to fragment. The evidence accumulated so far suggests that the worst flu epidemics coincide with peaks in the 11-year cycle of sunspot activity, and this was once again the case in 2000. Removing Professor Chandra from his position has not helped them find more evidence for this possibility. He points out that as much as a ton of bacterial material might fall to Earth from space daily, which translates into some 1,019 bacteria or 20,000 bacteria per square meter of the Earth's surface. This is an astonishing amount of material. Most of it simply adds to the unculturable or uncultured microbial flora present on Earth. But in some cases, this bacterial material turns against nature and leads to death and destruction. Just as life came from elsewhere, death, too, is sometimes an alien invader. Professor Chandra also argues that our ancestors drew the same conclusions he has drawn. Ancient Chinese astronomers chronicle numerous episodes when the apparition of comets preceded plague and disaster. The Mawangdui silk, compiled in 300 BC, details 29 different cometary forms and the various disasters associated with them, dating as far back as 1500 BC. Professor Chandra concludes all ancient civilizations, without exception, have looked upon comets with a sense of trepidations and awe. Comets were considered to be harbingers of doom, disease, and death, infecting men with a blood of lust to war, contaminating crops, and dispersing disease and plague. The views of ancient civilizations, the Chinese, Egyptians, and Indians, that laid the foundations of philosophy and science, including astronomy, should not be so easily dismissed.